Now that we have the project set up, we have Claude Code set up, we have Cursor set up, and we have some of the back end set up, I'm now going to move to the front end. But like I said in the first video, I don't have a lot of experience building mobile apps and using React Native. My experience is primarily in building web apps using React and TypeScript. So what I'm going to show you in this video is how I work with Claude Code to not only do the work of creating the React Native front end, or setting up, in this case, the React Native front end, but also learn how all of these different components work together to create the foundation of the React Native front end. So I'm going to show you how I prompt Claude Code to do that and actually get things set up while also learning. I need your help setting up the front end of this application. The front end is going to run on TypeScript, React Native, and Expo. It will be a mobile app. But before we set everything up, I need you to walk me through, in non-technical terms, what each component of the front end does and how it works as we're setting them up. I don't want you to write any code or change any files just yet. I just want you to explain to me how the different components of our TypeScript, React Native, and Expo front end will work once we start setting them up. So I just sent that prompt to Claude Code, but you can see that I actually started this off by writing a /clear command. That's to clear out all of the previous information about the project setup and about the back-end setup from Claude's brain so that it could start fresh. And here we go. This will explain to me all of the different parts: TypeScript, React Native, and Expo. Okay, thanks for this. Now I need you to help me get everything set up with TypeScript, React Native, and Expo. But I don't want you to do too much. I want you to do the bare minimum to get each of these parts of the front end set up, but I don't want you to go outside of the scope. We aren't going to build anything just yet. I only want to set up the foundation. Help me do that now, and at each step I want you to pause and explain to me what you've done in simple, non-technical terms. Alright, we can see Claude Code's to-do list. It says set up Expo project with TypeScript, and then it's going to verify basic project structure is created, and then test everything that runs properly. And then it's going to come back to me, as I requested it to help me understand exactly what it's done and why and how it all works together. So it says, I'll help you set up the foundation step by step. Let me start with the first step, creating an Expo project with TypeScript support. So it's asking if it can run this command, npx create Expo app at latest, front end, template, TypeScript. So this is saying I want to set up an Expo app, and I want to use the latest version. I want to put it in the front end, and I want to use the template from Expo that uses TypeScript as the language. So we can see everything's being set up here, and all of these files were populated after that command was run. Okay, so it just finished, and it says I created a new Expo project called Frontend with TypeScript already configured. This command downloaded all the necessary files and set up the basic structure for your mobile app. Think of it as creating the empty shell of your mobile app with all the plumbing already connected. Now let me check what files were created. So then it runs this command that lists the files that were created on the front end and reviews them. Looks like there might be an issue with the setup. Let me check if the Expo project was created properly. I notice the structure looks unusual. Let me check if there are any source files, or if this is perhaps a TypeScript installation rather than an Expo project. Let me try a different approach. It reviewed its work, and now it's saying that it did something wrong, and it's going to run this rm, which is remove, and it's going to full-on delete everything that it just did, interestingly enough. Alright, now it's asking me to run that command again, but outside of that front-end folder that we had created. So it looks like the issue may have been that because there was already a front-end folder, maybe that interrupted some things or caused some issue. Okay, so it's just asking to run the same command again, and what I'm going to do is go down to the third option, know and tell Claude what to do differently. Before doing anything else, I want you to do extensive internet research and do a deep dive into how to properly set up the Expo TypeScript React Native front end for an application like mine. Again, we're just trying to set up the bare bones foundation, nothing really complicated or specific to the features of my app right now. So now, because Claude has the ability to access the internet built into it. It's going to go out and search for various things on the internet to get this project set up correctly. One thing that we'll set up later on in future videos is inside this .claude folder, we're going to set up what are called subagents. One of the subagents that I like to create is a research subagent. A subagent is another AI that the main Claude AI can tell what to do. It'll go out and do a bunch of research in that case and bring back only the most important information to the main Claude that we talk to that will then take the actions for you. So we'll eventually set up subagents. I really like setting up the research subagent. Now it's asking me, is it okay if it goes out and pulls information from docs.expo.dev? And I'm going to say yes, and don't ask again. That essentially approves Claude to go out and look at the expo.dev website in the future without having to ask. All right, so it just came back to me after its research, and long story short, it is saying that the correct command to run is this one, which is just adding blank dash TypeScript instead of template TypeScript. We'll see if that works. Sometimes things like this don't work, and there's a couple things we can do to fix it. So it's asking me if we are okay with it removing the front end, and I'm going to say yes. Notice in that case I didn't say yes and don't ask for permission because I don't want it to just remove files without my knowledge of it. And now it's going to ask if it's okay to create that using the blank dash TypeScript, and we'll see if this works. Remember, this said that it didn't work based on its assessment of the work that it did. So if it says that something went wrong again, I'm going to ask it why it's incorrect so that I can understand if it actually is wrong. Okay, so the command had finished and it says perfect. Now let me verify project structure was created correctly. It says excellent. Let me check the key files, verifying this is a proper Expo TypeScript project. It's reading specific packages, and now it says perfect. Let me test the development server starts correctly, and it's going to run this command that is npm start. Fingers crossed that it works. Okay, it said great, the development server is running successfully, let me stop it, and then it wrote this kill command. Alright, now it gives us a summary. I'll leave this up on the screen while I read it so you can pause and read it for yourself. Okay, hope you had a second to read that. It sounds like everything is set up. Now that everything is set up correctly on the front end, I'm going to tell Claude to make a commit to both local and remote Git repositories, which just means save the code to my computer and save the code in GitHub. Please commit all of these changes to local and remote master branches of my repository. But before you do that, make sure that all of the correct files and extensions are added to the git ignore file so that we aren't committing any unnecessary files to our repositories. And then let's go over here to the source control panel where we can see all of these files still have plus signs next to them, so they're not staged for commit yet, which means they're not ready to be saved yet. And the AI is now going to go through and update the git ignore, which means it's going to make sure that there are additional files and extensions for files in the ignore file so that everything that is committed is actually valuable and must be committed, and everything else that's not valuable and isn't 100% vital to the project is not committed or saved. Okay, it's asking if it can make updates to the git ignore file, and I'm going to say yes. So it made changes to the git ignore file at the root of our project, but we do have this git ignore file here, which I'll have to ask Claude Code about prior to making the commits. So I'm going to hit exit and ask it about that. Can we remove the git ignore file from the front end directory because we have the git ignore file at the root of our project? If so, please remove the git ignore file from the front end directory if it's not necessary. If it is necessary, please explain to me in simple, non-technical terms why we must have the git ignore file in the front end directory and at the root of our project. So all I just said was, why is this git ignore here? And we also have this git ignore at the root of our project. My understanding is that we don't need this one and we only need the one at the root of the project, but let's see. So it found it and now it's reading it. It says, yes, we can safely remove the git ignore file from the front end directory. Here's why. And then it gives an explanation. And I'm just going to say, yes, that's okay. It'll now remove that. And then an interesting thing that we can do is while this is still thinking, I can send another message. Well, now that it's done thinking, it doesn't make a difference. But if it were still thinking and writing things out and making changes, I could type or speak another message and it would send that message as soon as the other one was finished. Okay, perfect. The front end gitignore file has been removed. Now our project uses just one gitignore file at the root, which keeps things simpler and avoids any potential conflicts between different ignore rules. Okay, now commit everything to the local and remote repositories on the master branch. So we can see it just ran the git add all command, and all of these files now have minus signs next to them, which means that they are added or staged, ready to be committed, and now it's asking if it can commit those files with this message here. Okay, now everything is committed to the local master branch, and it should run the commands to commit them to the GitHub master branch out on the internet. And it says your branch is ahead of origin/master by 1 commit. I'll push the changes to the remote branch, and I'll say yes. Now we should see purple and blue on the same line here in just a second. Yep, perfect. Now this means that the code on our computer and the code in GitHub match perfectly. Okay, it says perfect. All changes have been successfully committed to both your local and remote master branches. What I just committed. Your new Expo TypeScript React Native front-end foundation updated the gitignore, removed the duplicate gitignore, all the essential project files. Your repositories now contain your backend Django with the scheduler Django app, front-end Expo TypeScript React Native foundation, and proper gitignore. The front-end foundation is now safely stored in your repository and ready for development. Okay, great. Now we have the foundation of the front end and the back end set up for us to start writing code.